Employees look up to their leaders for guidance and suggestions, and if a leader is not strong, he or she can bring down the whole organization and become a cause for their downfall. A strong leader must show resilience and have the ability to inspire even the most challenging times. Through this panel, top leaders will help you uncover required skills to captivate your audience and succeed in business world. You will learn the right skill set required when leading in a time of crisis. This panel discussion will also teach you about the right business tools, how to effectively manage a routine remotely, how to build the right blueprint for your organization, and much more. I would like to welcome Sherry Houston, the moderator of this panel discussion, Manjeet Minhas, the drag from Dragon's Den, Harry Singh from Aiming Canada, Andrea Lukushoff from Broadreach Communications, Nunzio Presta, founder and CEO of Buy and Sell Business, Sean Leslie from the Leslie Group, and Danielle Bruven Graham from Dream Maker Ventures. Over to you, Sherry.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody, to the leadership panel discussion. We've got some amazing leaders here that we're going to ask some questions of them to tell us from their experience and skills what they see as the biggest leadership challenges, gaps, and skills, and things to do to compensate for those gaps in our knowledge. So, welcome, and I'm going to start our questions off with Danielle. Danielle, if you can just start us off with leadership skills are one aspect in which there's a big gap often in a startup. What leadership gaps have you seen in companies that are pitching to you as in your angel network group? Is Danielle with us? I'm not seeing everybody. All right, I am going to move on to Nunzio. All right, Nunzio, you're here. I can see you. What tools and systems do you wish you knew about when you were starting your business? What gaps did you see?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think when you start a business, in my opinion, it's not so much of a tool or system, but what entrepreneurs fail to set up are what I call non-negotiables. And non-negotiables in life should be aimed at personal and professional growth. And I think when you set up these non-negotiables, you'll be happier, you have more energy, and you'll make higher quality decisions. And I have a few in my life. Like, for example, I want 8 hours of sleep every night. I want to meditate daily. I want to read daily. I want to try and be home every single night for dinner with my family. And I want to work out at least 3 times a week. Like I said, it's not a tool or system, but I think it's something you need to establish when starting a business. And I feel a lot of entrepreneurs don't establish that, and they burn out really quickly. Now, as for tools and tech specifically, that changes every year. It sometimes changes every month. And I'm always looking for new tech that can make us more productive. But in my opinion, especially when starting a business, I think technology isn't that important. What's important are the people you decide to do business with. And I think, a lot of people talk about it, but they don't actually execute on it. I think they hire quickly or get into partnerships too quickly, and it's not always the right move. So you need to have faith. You need to have faith in those types of people that you want to do business with. And if you give them the necessary tools, they'll do wonderful things with it. But it usually doesn't work the other way around. So I think standing strong on that front, and then also standing strong on creating a type of culture, that a type of culture that you really want to be part of is important when starting a business. For example, at buyandsellbusiness.com, we have this results only work environment where we focus on results and performance, not really where or when you work. And this has created this culture of trust and accountability and autonomy, and putting this spotlight on contribution more than anything. And with that type of culture in place, we're able to actually develop internal tools. For example, we developed this internal tool called Feature Packets. So it's this cross-functional management tool that really helps our team or people from multiple departments collaborate and align. And it helps the team go over all the details and scope of a project, to create a quick alignment for yes and no's. The ultimate goal with that sort of tool is to socialize ideas and collaborate and communicate and provide as much transparency as possible in order to be accountable. And I think that tool really accomplishes that. So we want to have, we want to make sure that the people on our team have the information needed to make great decisions as quickly as possible. So I do recommend, and this is another gap, but I do recommend that a lot of startups, or most startups, should establish some sort of management tool to work out ideas instead of developing strategies and products and campaigns blindly. The whole, move fast, break thing approach, in my opinion, isn't always the best advice. But I'll end it with this. The backbone of a business, especially when starting, isn't really about tools or systems like I started talking about. It's about building the right culture and picking out the people who believe progress is possible, and then guiding those people to use their best judgment so they can contribute. And that's what it's all about. There's too many teams that have people on the sidelines, and you really can't have that when you're starting a business. Everyone has to move that needle and contribute. And I know it could sound easy, but it's not. And you really need to focus on finding those A+ people.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nunzio. And I'm going to come to Manjeet next. Manjeet, I'm going to actually combine our first question that we'd had for Danielle plus the question that I had really wanted to direct your way. Is Nunzio's just talked about some of the things that they've put in place as they've grown and learned about their business. So what would be some of the leadership gaps that you see from people that are pitching to you, but also what were the challenges you faced when you started as a leader? And how did you overcome them personally?
Well, thank you for the question, and hi to everybody listening. Thanks for joining us today. Yeah, those are some pretty big questions. I will definitely answer them, try to answer them concisely, since we don't have tons of time. But I truly believe that every person, no matter who you are, what company you run, even if you are not an entrepreneur yourself, even if you work for a company, you need to know and learn the skill of power of selling and pitching. You are always pitching yourselves, your skills, your company, your business. And so how do you do that? You do that by great storytelling. You do that with knowing your facts. And you do that by really practicing, by knowing what you have to offer. Because in this day and age, everybody's attention span is really short. When I started, I had a 5-minute pitch because, well, there was no show like Dragon's Den or any other show like that to teach me what a pitch is. But I would say that it needs to be 90 seconds. It needs to answer the big questions anybody, whether it's an investor like myself or whether it's just even a customer that you're trying to sell your product or your service to. It is who you are. So like I said, your story quickly. What you're selling, it needs to solve a problem that they have. And they need to understand it very quickly. You can't complicate it too much, otherwise they will lose interest. Why? Very importantly, why are you trying to sell this product? Where geographically also, that can be important too, depending if it's a service-based business. When can I get it now? Do I have to pay for it and wait for it? When, very important also. And then how, if you're looking for investors, if you're pitching, how are you going to execute? Because remember, business ideas and ideas in general are a dime a dozen. They mean nothing. It's about how, it's about execution. And then you talked about what are the challenges? Well, every business has a lot of challenges. I definitely have had many in 22 years of being an entrepreneur. First and foremost, something that everybody deals with, and it is a constant, no matter if you're small, medium, or large, it is cash flow. It is how do we manage in order to pay for what our dreams are and what we're doing. Because there are lots of things that cost a lot of money in a business, lots of overhead, marketing, the list goes on. And I would say a way that we have managed that, because we bootstrapped our business, even though I invest in others' businesses, nobody has invested in mine. You know what? I planned it. I planned it out. I planned it out to the $100. I ran, and I made sure I was really good at understanding my company finances, the cost of everything. If you've ever watched Dragon's Den, one of the first questions I ask always is, how much does it cost? And I better get that answer to the penny because it's something that you should know. Otherwise, you know what? I rarely have seen somebody be successful if they can't manage their cash flow, even if you have the most brilliant idea and product on the planet. I would say as you are growing, it is hard. A big challenge many businesses have, including myself, is balancing quality, growth, and innovation. Often you do have to choose at a certain point in time, and it is hard to choose. But I would say that trying to balance those three things in a particular time of a business are important. You have to understand where you are, or what your talent pool, what your team members can handle, and also what the future growth plan is of the business, and where you are today. It's very important. Just as individuals, we should be self-aware. Our businesses should be self-aware, and very tough with peeling the onion to say what we're good at as business owners and what our business is good at and what it's not really strong at. And then, the last thing I think is marketing. I think everybody has a challenge with getting that right, understanding who their customer is, who they're talking to, how they're reaching them, and in what creative ways to stand out in the crowd. You have to see and you have to cut through the noise often in your competitors in order to find those customers. How do you do that in a way that is true to your vision, your mission, your company culture, but then also attracting clients? And in the long term, also, your talent pool and team members. And so we've managed that by doing a lot of experimenting, trying a lot of different things, thinking outside the box, really making nothing off limits, including 22 years ago when nobody did it, was making my brother and I the face of the company because we couldn't afford actors. And so it turned out to be, a brilliant business plan or a marketing plan at that time. So I think that you have to experiment with traditional marketing, with new marketing, and you have to put yourself out there. And it's okay if it doesn't work, but then you do have to use data and analytics that are available to you, unlike they were before. So I think lots of ways to solve the challenges, but there's lots of challenges for sure.
Thank you so much, Manjeet. That was awesome and really insightful around marketing, cash flow, money, and the power of selling and pitching. And that brings me over to Andrea, because Andrea's company is around those communications. So when the marketing doesn't go so well, or a cash flow issue comes up and you're having to go to customers that you had a 90-day and now you're asking them to collect in 15 days. How do you communicate some of these challenges that you stumble into as a startup entrepreneur? How do you communicate in a way that keeps the company safe and positive for both employees, internal and external? Andrea, can you answer us on communications and challenges?
For sure. And it really depends on what sort of challenge you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a crisis, I mean, that's a very, very difficult thing to communicate through. And it's really important to have a certain skill set for that. And, if you're relating to a crisis here, you need to mobilize very quickly. You need to assess your audiences. You need to understand what information everyone needs. And then you need to very proactively and very quickly start to communicate it. So some of the skills that you are going to need if you are experiencing a bit of a crisis is speed. Because as many of us here know, silence is the new no comment. And what that means is that with access to social media, you will be expected to respond immediately. And if it is a significant crisis for your company, it may be within the hour. And you may just be acknowledging the crisis, but you need to say something. You also need to remain calm. We counsel leaders, CEOs, executive teams all the time in crisis. And one of the first things that we work with them on is just to let them know that we will weather this storm together and we will remain calm. And in doing that, it really sets the tone for mobilizing to handle the crisis. And then one thing that we find that helps a company weather a crisis is to be prepared in advance. And so what I'd highly recommend to any executive out there that is either starting up a company, but we've worked with very large companies that don't have a crisis plan, that have never run through mock scenarios. I'd highly recommend that you gather a crisis team together. You develop a crisis plan so that you can anticipate, anyone looking at their company could probably anticipate 3 to 5 to 10 scenarios that could potentially happen, and to work through those in advance. And what working through those in advance looks like: develop a set of key messages, understand who your target audiences are, understand what you might say to them and when, so that should one of those scenarios hit, you are able to mobilize. Make sure your team internally has the knowledge in terms of what their role and responsibilities are, what their authority is, and make sure that everyone is able to connect, to put their heads together to address this as quickly as possible. And when we are counseling clients on this, there's 4 steps that they typically need to take. Number 1, it's gaining control. So you need to leverage all the resources at your disposal to really assess and understand what happened in a very factual way and in a very accurate way, so that you understand what you're dealing with. Then you need to start to manage the crisis. And that means starting to develop key messages, starting to identify target audiences, starting to identify who needs to be communicated to and when, both internally and also externally. And as you're developing key messages, they need to really be honed and focus on just a few things, very factually. What happened? What is still happening? What is the underlying cause of what happened? What will be happening next? Are we being reactive? What are we doing? And who has been impacted? That at the very least can help you start to formulate messages so that you can start to respond. And then you need to start communicating very specifically to whomever needs to be communicated to, and then to monitor responses. So you should have your team on social media. You should have your team monitoring media, monitor your call centers, and certainly your internal channels, so that if there are issues percolating internally, you can address them right away.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrea. It absolutely gives a great picture on how to communicate during a crisis and during the challenges that are going to come up for organizations, because we all face them. So now that we've gone through sort of startup to challenges to what do you need in your original starting business, and then how do you deal with challenges if they roll out into the public's eye, I'm going to come over to Sean now to get Sean to talk about how might you avoid some of these crises and challenges. How might we set up a blueprint for an organization in order to safeguard it or to set it up for success? What are some of your tips in that area?
It's interesting because it's nice to hear from so many, talented people. And, I look back when I first opened this company 29 years ago, and it took me about a year and a half just to plan for what was I going to build, who was I going to sell to, what value I was going to offer to them, and then what were my resources, how much money did I need? Did I need outside money? And like a lot of people, the answer was I didn't want any outside money. I didn't want somebody telling me what I needed to do, how quickly I needed to do it. I wanted to build something a little different. And I kind of laugh when I think back, and some people find this kind of funny. When I first opened the company, I gave myself the title of vice president. Nobody ever asked me who the president was. And the reality was, because I didn't want to think I was a mom and pop. The other thing is I didn't want to build a mom and pop, so I felt that one day I could promote myself to be president. And it took me 2 years to do that. And it literally was pretty hilarious. I actually had a business card, vice president, which of course now I don't really have any business cards. But the key was it took me, when I built my plan, I had targets in mind. I had a value proposition. And one things I continue to tell people, if you don't know what your customer wants, then you have nothing to sell them. And just like we heard earlier in that conversation, you don't have a lot of time. I get pitched all day long, and literally I start to tune out at around 2 minutes. And at about 5 minutes, it's usually, I've got to take a call, which usually means I don't want to listen to anymore. So in the first 2 minutes, you need to tell me very quickly, what can you do for me today? And let's use crisis as an example. COVID hit. We have a little over 1,000 SME clients across Canada. COVID hit. Most of my competitors went home and stayed home and just sat there. What we did is, the first thing I did is, what I communicated to my team. Fortunately, we work a lot remotely already. Open your laptop, and I want you to send an email to every single customer to see how they're doing. And then I want you to phone them an hour later. And they said, how do I phone? I said, well, you're going to make a lot of calls. And they said, what do you want me to say? And I said, how are you doing? How's your business coping? Do you need any help? And wait. And the most common thing we got back was, thanks for calling. And then I told them 2 weeks later to do it again. And then 2 weeks later to do it again. And they're going, but Sean, why are we doing this? Because your client is suffering right now. And it's really interesting. We keep hearing, and I'm in the insurance business, you'll hear large insurance companies, I'm not going to pick on any right now, but you'll hear them say, you know what, it's the new normal. The reality is it's not normal. Okay? Most organizations right now, if they can't grow their revenue, they want to cut their expenses. So how do we help them do that? Okay? How do we assist them through these tough times? And the key is, you got to ask them what's going on. And if I was to say, rough percentages, 40% of our clients are doing phenomenal. They'll say, Sean, we're so busy, we can't even hire people. But there's that other 20% that literally are not going to make it. And you have to kind of help them and hold their hand, but you can't get dragged down because they're not going to make it. The other 40% just need a lot of help. And a lot of people, if you think of it now, there was a great article yesterday in the newspaper that said, and it's funny, I still read a newspaper, but the reality is, there was an article everybody talks about, we won't go back to the office. I firmly believe that is not true. We will go back to a combination of a hybrid. The number of people that are suffering from depression, loneliness, isolation. I was at the office today. I was at the office yesterday. I get hugs from people going, it's so nice to be back. I miss the vibration. I miss the team. And it's really hard to build a team, and you got to work at it when you're doing it by Zoom, when you're doing it virtually. You can do it, but it's a lot more work. So the first step I'd say is, take your time. Don't get rushed, and expect to fail. Expect that things won't always work. And as you heard, you try a million different things. Sometimes you have to try it a little longer because it hasn't had time. And marketing is a huge one. We use a phrase in our company that our marketing department is our clients. We ask our clients pretty regularly, do you like what we're doing? Yes or no? What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? And I usually ask a question, about 3 or 4 minutes on, so you're happy with us? And the most common answer we get back is, we're extremely happy. Can you do me a favor? Do you have one person that you can refer our business to where we can help them out? Not 10, 1. And can you call them? Which is a pretty awkward thing. So when you first start doing it, can you call them and say, I know this guy named Sean Leslie. He runs a great business. He manages our benefits. He reduces and controls our costs. Could you give him 15 minutes? I don't want an hour, but 15 minutes. And if in 15 minutes he can't persuade you that you should take a look at what his company offers, then at least you met someone that maybe he can connect you somewhere else. And that's really the ultimate here is this. You got to add value, and you got to do it quickly. But then at the end, as we all know, if you don't deliver, then you failed. And the other big thing, which is going to sound really weird, you need to learn to say no. There are lots of clients we do not want. You have to learn to fire clients, which sounds really horrible, but there are some clients you're just not a good fit. There's other people that will burn through your time, just like a pitch. Somebody wants to pitch you, and again, I've got a small private equity company that I also run, and I'm invested now in about 14 different ones. But literally, somebody goes in, I want to give me my 3-hour pitch, and I'm looking at them going, wow, like no. So at the end of the day, the blueprint is, you have to wear a lot of hats, and then the other thing, you better hire really good people that are better than you, and then listen to them.
Fantastic, Sean. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
And that's a great segue into what I want to ask Harry. So, on our journey through startup to challenges to gaps to blueprint for success, thank you, Sean. And now to Harry of how then do you maximize productivity and inspire innovation? Because innovation's for the next, for the future piece. So, can you take us now into the future from startup now to the growing part?
Yeah, no, thank you. A very hot topic, isn't it? Globally, I think one of the buzzwords is innovation, and most companies that have gotten to the top have gotten there through innovation, and with innovation comes opportunities, and we see that every day in Canada. Amazing innovations scattered through the 150 plus incubators, accelerators, across the country. While we see some tremendous innovation happening at early stage companies, at aiming of what our firm's core competencies are globally and in Canada is to help companies fund innovation and growth. And to be totally transparent, some of the best, coolest, fun innovation we witness day in and day out is happening at the SME early stage startup communities. I'm a firm believer that as we move, into a post-COVID economy, that innovation is going to play a much more vital role than ever before. And fortunately, I think the pandemic has taught us some very valuable lessons. And I think one of the lessons we all have to take from this is a renewed faith or a reinforced value in the importance of R&D. And we see some of the successes. The introduction of the vaccine. Right there on the forefront. So it's very important for us to empower businesses and individuals to innovate, because ultimately we rely on them for solutions. So the question coming back to it is, well, how do we inspire innovation within the organization? And I have to say that starts with strong leadership. Innovation has to trickle top down. It just doesn't automatically happen. So, it starts with leadership that makes it clear throughout the organization that innovation is a priority. Making innovation a strong belief, certainly requires thinking about innovation in everything you do inside the company. And I'm a firm believer that you can't be timid in this vision. You cannot compromise on pushing the envelope, bringing that out of box thinking because of failure or of being afraid to fail. Guess what? Failure is a natural part of innovating, and it must be embraced. I'll actually take it a step further and say, if you really want to be an innovation first country, encourage those failures, because there's invaluable learning through those failures, and there's some opportunities you'd be surprised that come out of it. I'd say the other part of it that's very important to becoming an innovation first company is strong recognition for flow of ideas. So set strong recognition, set strong rewards for anyone that has a new idea, even if the idea sounds crazy or ludicrous. You want your staff to truly know that, and not just words, truly feel that they can speak openly to their leadership about ideas, and that you will empower them as best as you can. And I'd say, based on what you hear, even if you're a little bit curious about a new idea that's been pitched to you, try to put aside a small budget to help create or at least conceptualize the idea or get it to some level of an MVP. Guess what? These things get noticed within the organization and have a ripple effect throughout the organization, encouraging others to participate. And I don't think you can compromise on that. The other part of it for business owners is to leverage support. Well, guess what? We are a global innovation funding company, so we have a global perspective on this. And Canada is on the forefront of all the main countries globally in terms of the level of government support to help fund innovation, product development, R&D, experimentation, be that through R&D tax credits, be that through federal, provincial government grants to fund innovation. There are programs where you can subsidize up to 80% of your technical staff devoted towards innovation. There are grants federally and provincially funded that are in the millions of dollars. Leverage that support, because oftentimes, you want to invest in innovation, and when you're in the middle of a pandemic, it's a double-edged sword. Do I really fork up this money and into a new idea that I'm uncertain about the ROI? Well, some of these questions go away when you're leveraging the immense opportunities around government funding. And it's beyond just what you read online. It's beyond just what maybe someone has emailed you. There are literally thousands and thousands of programs federally, provincially. Leverage them, be smart in business. And I think if you focus on some of those three areas that I just talked about, and you do it in a regimented fashion, that innovation is going to become a core part of your DNA within the organization and instrumental to your growth.
Fantastic. And I would encourage everyone to take note of Harry's company name and Harry's name, because he knows where that money is, those grants and R&Ds and innovation opportunities for tax credits. So just for the sake of time, I'm actually going to ask one question that I want each of you to answer, sort of a 30-second answer. And there's three bits to it. So you can pick one of these to answer. A strong leader must show resilience and have the ability to inspire, even during the most challenging times. What is your 1 or 2 tips for one of these three things? How does a leader build resilience? How do you inspire others? How do you deal with a challenging time? So we're going to go round table here, and I'm starting with Nunzio first.
No problem. Yeah, so how to build resilience, I think the best way to do that is to focus on the future. You need to come to grips that, with the fact that you can't really control timelines, especially during challenging times. All you can control is the outcome. So you need to set this tone for the organization by staying calm and not, going too high and not going too low. And you have to communicate that and show that you have faith that everything will be better by focusing on the future. And I think a couple ways you can execute on that is by being a great listener, right? You need to listen to the things you don't want to hear, especially during challenging times. You constantly have to measure your happiness and progress. You also have to audit your business environment. So I use something called SET. We developed it internally, and it's where we are constantly auditing social, economic, and tech trends. So we know when and where to go. And I also think the most important part in creating a resilient organization is you need to be transparent and ask everyone in the organization to come together and help each other. Like nothing should be sugarcoated, especially during challenging times. Humans fear the unknown. So over communicating, whether it's bad or good, will be better in the long run.
Fabulous. So we're talking resilient, how to build resilience, inspire others, or deal with the challenging times. Thanks you, Nunzio, on that. Manjeet, any tips you'd like to add in on any of those?
Yeah, I think that they all come hand in hand. And I think that in order for a business to build resilience, first and foremost, the leader has to be resilient and have some leadership qualities. And so I think it's important for an entrepreneur to actually focus on themselves first. How do you individually build resilience? You do that with confidence, with courage. How do you build confidence? You do that by cultivating that inner champion. All of us have that inner critic. You have to try to quiet that down and build that inner champion in order to help you take risks. Personal risks are very important that help you take risks in your business and show and lead by example. I would also say a way you build resilience as an individual is to let go of the myth and the idea of being perfect. Not everything has to be 100% perfect before you unleash it. Or before you take that risk. So I think that it's important to build personal confidence and courage. And by courage, I mean by not letting fear stop you. We all are fearful at many different times in our lives. And it's very important that we often through that fear and come out on the other side. Not to say that you'll be successful on the other side, but you will get through it. It will make you stronger. It will make you learn something about yourself, your team, your company. And also it might just tell you what not to do again, which is okay too. So I do think that personal resilience in leadership can very quickly then be filtered down to your company. I can use a quick example. When the pandemic hit, I never thought that I would be in the hand sanitizer business. But very quickly in 2 months, I made 11 million bottles of hand sanitizer. I never, and my team, my company, anybody around me had never done it before. But we very, very quickly, in 7 days, got all the licenses, stopped making vodka, and made hand sanitizer to help our community. And I think that it was something that I had to lead. I had to show that I was going to take the risk. We might fail at this. It might be a complete disaster. But you know what? We're going to systematically, with a plan, do this. We are all going to talk it through. Everybody is going to have the power to make some decisions to make sure that this happens. And we're going to over communicate to make sure that there are no gaps, to make sure that everybody who is on board and leading can understand what we're trying to do to make a difference. So I think that, rising to the occasion and being resilient is something that is personal and company.
Thank you so much, Manjeet. And hopefully there was still some vodka because, as you know, alcohol was the #1 requirement during COVID.
There still was, but Shell's
most important.
There was.
Yes, we did need our alcohol. It was one of the critical items we needed in our economy. Andrea, anything on resilience, inspiring others, or dealing with challenging times?
Sure. I'll respond to dealing with resilience in a very personal way. And my kids, my friends, my team will tell you that one of my mantras is that life happens for you, not to you. And I believe that we grow through very difficult times. In fact, we grow the most through difficult times if we're willing to learn from them. So when things get tough, I personally turn to the teachings of Tara Brach. She is a psychologist. She's a Buddhist teacher. She teaches meditation. And I studied with her in the United States. She's got amazing videos on YouTube for anyone out there. And she teaches the concepts of radical acceptance and radical compassion. So what I do first to get through sort of difficult times and be resilient is it's a mindset shift. So I go straight to my mindset and try to figure out how this challenge will serve me. How will I grow through it? How will it help me? And then the moment I'm able to shift my mindset to that, then I can absolutely get into the mode of mobilizing, planning a strategy, and really creating a plan to overcome almost anything.
Fantastic. I took a bunch of notes there as well. Thank you so much. And Sean, over to you on resilience, inspiration, and challenging times.
Yeah, you know what everybody has said is so true. First of all, you got to step up as the leader immediately. You can't wait. You need to lead. You need to communicate. You need to listen. But the #1 thing is you need to do something. You can't just sit on your hands because it will not go away, and it will only get worse. You need, and yeah, there are tough things that we have to do, and there's changes that we have to make. And you as the leader, especially with you having all your money in the business, have to make those decisions. So at the end of the day, it may be the wrong decision, but you still have to make it. And and sometimes you need guidance, and that's why you have teams around you. And that's why you have third-party companies like Andrea who help you on communications, where you make a call and say, here's what's going on. What do you suggest? And she goes, don't do that.
Who said that?
Do this instead. And then you have a discussion, not an argument, and you come up with a, yes, that's the best way to do it. And it's short and concise. And then you put it into action. Okay. No different when, example, let's say your team lets down a customer. The first thing you got to do is call them. And you don't pull a Justin Trudeau and just say, I'm sorry. You actually pull a real, hey, we screwed up and here's what we're going to do to fix it. And we actually tell a client right from the start, we're really good, but we will make mistakes, but we will fix them immediately and not do them again. Because nobody is perfect. So if you set the stage that you're perfect, you will get fired. And a client will keep saying, how high will you jump? Jump a little higher. The answer is set the expectation and communicate. And again, and then say, let's move past this. How do we fix it? We've already put it into place to fix it, or we've already fixed it. And again, we deal with it every single day. And at the end of the day, it's a matter of how you deal with it. Again, and we're no different than our customers. Our customers make mistakes every day. So we always say, we're going to be a partner with you. How do we work together to help you achieve? And it goes back to that. And by doing that, you inspire your team that you're not afraid to lead. And then they get the confidence that they're not afraid because you'll back them up. Because that's another big thing. You need to back up your team majority of the time.
So true. Harry, coming to you next to wrap us up. Resilience, inspiration, and challenging times.
Yeah, no, I think there's been some tremendous, I guess, insights that have already been provided. I'd say I've always said in order to remain resilient, and leaders have no other option, it starts with the mind. It's very important, and Nuncio talked about non-negotiables. One of the non-negotiables for me, and what we try to instill here at Aiming is, doesn't matter what your role is within the organization, you've got to approach every task with a winning mindset and a positive attitude. And if that becomes a core part of just how you operate, it builds resilience. Coping with tough times, Manjeet had a great example there. We've seen that ourselves. Look, the reality is that COVID's had a tremendous impact on companies across Canada. You really feel bad, and you try your best to help the ones that haven't, done as well as others. But you equally need to appreciate companies that have taken the pandemic and seen that as an opportunity. We've got clients that were, in fabrication, or they were in textiles, and they pivoted towards making face masks. To further Manjeet's example, we've got clients in the health and beauty products industry that pivoted towards making hand sanitizers and surface sanitizers. And guess what? These product lines have now resulted into making the pandemic some of the most profitable years since inception for these clients. So you cannot compromise on being opportunistic in business. You can't compromise on being open-minded. And my humble opinion is, if you do that with an innovation-first mindset, you're certainly setting yourself up for success with some key differentiators against competition.
Totally agree.
Fantastic. Thank you, Harry. Thank you to everyone on the panel. Andrea, if you can even just type into the chat, if you open that up, we have a question asking what's the YouTube channel or psychologist that you mentioned? I believe it was the Tara Brach.
It's Tara Brach, Brach. She's really transformational. She's wonderful.
Brach, for those that have asked the question. And I do know that we are out of time. I'm not sure if there we do see Maheen there. So thank you to everybody on this panel. Wonderful insights from startup all the way through to innovating and growing. So thank you so much for joining me.
Adding to you, Sherry, thank you all for joining this panel and being so insightful. I believe our audience have learned a lot from hearing your thoughts, your opinions on the matter at hand, as well as how to improve ourselves to become better leaders. So I truly appreciate your valuable contribution to this panel. It's always a pleasure having such knowledgeable people on our panel. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.